Jesus' love and compassion, a story of redemption. The streets of Capernaum were alive with whispers. A woman, shunned by society, sat alone outside the city gates. Her name was Miriam, and she had spent years suffering from an illness that made her an outcast. She was unclean, unwanted, and unseen. For 12 long years, Miriam had endured unbearable pain. She had spent all her savings on physicians, only to hear the same hopeless words. "There is nothing more we can do." People avoided her, afraid of becoming unclean themselves. She had no family left, no one to hold her hand, no one to comfort her in the lonely nights. Then one morning, she heard the name that had been spreading like wildfire: Jesus of Nazareth. Rumors spoke of his power, how he healed the blind, cast out demons, and made the lame walk. Some called him a prophet. Others whispered that he was the promised Messiah. Miriam's heart pounded. Could this be her chance? The next day, as Jesus walked through the crowded marketplace, a surge of people followed him. Miriam saw him from a distance. His face was kind, his eyes full of love. He was nothing like the religious leaders who condemned and cast people aside. She watched as he placed his hand on a crippled man who immediately stood up and began to walk. The crowd gasped. Miriam's breath caught in her throat. This was real. But how could she, an unclean woman, approach him? Touching a man, especially a teacher like him, would be considered disgraceful. She could be punished. Fear clutched her heart, but then she remembered something she had heard. He does not turn anyone away. Her hands trembled as she pulled her shawl over her face and stepped into the crowd. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to turn back, but desperation was stronger than fear. She inched closer, pushing through the mass of people. Then she saw him. His robe swayed gently with each step. Hope swelled within her. If I just touch the hem of his garment, I will be healed. Her heart pounded in her chest as she reached forward. Her fingers brushed the edge of his robe. Just for a second. Immediately, warmth surged through her body. The pain, the sickness, gone. It was as if a river of light had washed over her. She gasped, nearly collapsing from the shock of it. But then, Jesus stopped who touched me. His voice was gentle yet firm. The crowd fell silent. His disciples looked at him in confusion. "Master, so many people are pressing against you. How can you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus turned slowly, his eyes scanning the crowd. I felt power go out from me. Miriam's body stiffened. Should she run, hide? But she knew she couldn't. This was the moment of truth. Trembling, she stepped forward and fell at his feet. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "It was me, Lord. I have been sick for 12 years, but the moment I touched your robe, I was healed." For a moment, silence hung in the air. The crowd held its breath. Then, Jesus knelt beside her. His eyes, filled with the deepest love she had ever seen, met hers. "Daughter," he said, his voice warm and full of compassion, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." The words hit Miriam like a flood. Daughter. No one had called her that in years. She wasn't just healed, she was seen, accepted, and loved. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she stood up, her heart lighter than ever before. She had spent years being cast aside, but Jesus, he had welcomed her with open arms. As she walked away, whole and redeemed, the name of Jesus burned in her heart. She would never forget this day.